Welcome back and welcome to episode number 8 of the One More K podcast, supported by Lecka Nutrition. Today is kind of a special day because, as you can see, we have 3 faces on the screen. Of course, there's Ned Phillips as usual. Good morning, Ned.
Good morning, Marcus.
And we have a special guest today, Ewegene Tan from Malaysia.
Hi, guys.
So as we have promised you guys, we are starting to open up the podcast to more guests. And as we have also promised you, we are going to cover more Asian countries. Today, we have our first snapshot of the beautiful country of Malaysia, truly Asia, they say. So we're excited to have Ewegene with us. Quick introduction about Ewegene, just to make sure that we get everything right here. He is a founder and race director of the Malaysian Mountain Trail Festival, also called MMTF. He is an accomplished long-distance runner himself. He has done Tor Des Geants twice in the Swiss Alps, has done the Dragonback race in Wales, holy moly, has twice finished the Bromo Tengger Semeru, 170 kilometers, and G5N in Malaysia, where he has been the winner. Welcome, Ewegene. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you for the introduction, Marcus.
We are going to cover the Malaysian segment in a few minutes. As usual, however, we're starting off with the news of the week to make sure we cover everything that is going on in this exciting and fast-moving trail and ultra running world. And of course, Ewegene, you're more than welcome to comment on anything that comes your way. We're also looking forward to hear your input on anything that's happening. But let's start with Ned. We have some news from your side. What have you coming across the last few days, Ned?
Marcus, you have surprised me with my news from my side. Do I have a major announcement I don't know about? Is this something that some secret that I meant to spill?
That's not the case. I hope, at least. I was thinking of your podcast you were listening to of Single Track, and you were keen to talk about that.
Yes. Thank you so much. You see, Marcus is the brains of the operation here. I'm just the person who shows up and fills in the space. It was a wonderful conversation that was had. So, Marcus, I think this is the 8th episode that we continually talk about UTMB. But this one was, I think, a lot more thoughtful and a lot more put together. So this single track podcast has been around for a long time, one of the best kind of ones out there. And he had some pretty strong views about the whole, Gary, UTMB, Whistler situation. So we got Paul Huddle on. Now, for those of you who are old, Ewegene, I'm not going to ask your age, but I'm going to assume you're older than Marcus. You're older than Marcus, which is not hard. Paul Huddle is a legend in our sport, like truly a legend. He's was there at the beginning of Ironman. He raced some of the greats, as it says here. He did Western States way back. He's a thoughtful guy, and the thrust of the podcast was this. People throw crap at Ironman, and it's really just a bunch of good people trying to do their best. Like any organization. Why does it get this kind of bad rap? And, we can discuss this probably at length. But what Paul Huddle was saying is, look, I understand there's a lot of negativity. I understand there's 2 sides or 3 sides or 4 sides to this story. And Paul Huddle, I listened to it as I did my longer run. And, I have a lot of respect for Paul Huddle because I followed him. But his message was this. Could we have done it better? Yes. Could Ironman communicate better? Yes. Are we some evil conglomerate that's out here trying to take away the soul of ultra running? Absolutely not. Like they're buying 2 races a year. He made the point that Jamil Curry, who runs Viper Racing in America, has 60 races and has brought like 10 in the last year. So where's the negativity on him? But he acknowledged that Ironman could do better. So it was really a fascinating look into that Ironman's really just trying to do its best, and it's made some mistakes. And apparently, they had sleepless nights, lots of sleepless nights, and he didn't sleep, and the Paletis were not sleeping, and they try to sort it out. And I think for anybody who really wants to get both sides of this story, super worth listening to.
Thanks, Ned. I think that's a fairly accurate summary of this podcast. Again, everyone can listen to it. Eugene, we're jumping right into this. We will cover Malaysia in a minute, of course, but what are your thoughts on the UTMB? I guess we're calling it drama recently. That's how we're calling it. We haven't found a better word yet. It's not a scandal, but it's kind of a drama, given that it's been covered in our episode day by day.
I would say personally that there's a lot of misconception out there regards to the Ironman takeover of UTMB. To some extent, many who spoke does not know to what extent have they bought into UTMB, and to what extent are the Politi family financially driven, or are they looking for capital injection, which are needed, especially in difficult moments like the pandemic. How do they drive across the pandemic, for example? All this should be taken into consideration before one make a comment, and not just because of an incident and then an unfair remark is made and then being blown out of proportion. Yeah.
As a race director, Eugene, I don't know if you've listened to this podcast, but one question, and the questions were very direct. Yeah. There's this idea that Ironman just steams into a country and buys out races at will. And Paul Huddle said, we would respectfully call a race director and just introduce ourselves and just ask. And if they said no, we would walk away. And it was, you're a race director. I'm not going to ask you if Ironman's approached or anything, but that's what they basically was like. Ironman was saying, look, sure, could we have handled this better? Of course. But really, we don't, we call race directors, and if they've done a good job, we just respectfully ask if they're interested. Yeah. That makes sense, right?
Yeah. For me, it does.
Have you talked to the Ironman UTMB group already? Ever?
Lip seal.
I feel like there might be some more news coming this year. All right, interesting. Thank you for those perspectives. I appreciate the insights. Again, we're going to come into Malaysia in a second. In the meantime, also, we're following up on something else we covered last week, which was Strava. And we have digged into the Amer Sports IPO on the last episode, which received some very positive feedback. People really appreciate us digging into the business side of trail running and outdoor sports. So we promised you guys out there another quick analysis on Strava. The first question for you, Ned and Eugene, are you both premium subscribers to Strava?
The company
Eugene, why don't you go first?
Well, basically, we register under the company to run some virtual challenges. So, yeah.
So you are a business user of Strava, as you as a company are using Strava for commercial interest.
Correct.
I am not a premium subscriber.
You are, however, using it very, very frequently, Ned.
I use it as it says. If it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. So I use it every run.
All right. So now let's do a quick Marcus analysis of this company, given it is an essential part of trail running and cycling and other sports. For the ones who don't know Strava too well from the business side, I need to rattle through some stats here just to give you an idea of this huge entity now that's been built since 2009, founded in San Francisco. It has raised up to date $180 million US. Just the last funding round was basically during COVID in November 2020, where they raised 110 million United States dollars. They have around 290-ish employees, and the valuation of the company is 1.5 billion US dollars as of the last funding round. So in startup terms, this company is a so-called unicorn, as it's valued more than $1 billion. So they have raised a bunch of money, a lot of money, have been around now around 14 to 15 years, and are, as we all know, a very essential part to this community. So now let's dig into this, and I need to ask for your patience for a tiny bit. I digged into Strava, and what came across was the latest funding round in November 2020 was done by a Brazilian investment firm, which I found very interesting. That emerging market investment firm put in a lot of money into Strava. However, as with many things in technology, and the last 3 years, we have seen 15% layoff of the staff. We believe that has been due to probably hiring too many people in COVID times, and then, as usual, they corrected themselves and had to lay off staff. Then in 23, in January, they did significant price hikes where no notice has been given. There was a lot of uproar in the community where Strava didn't announce the price hikes of their subscription, and a lot of bad press came out. Then a month later, in February 2023, the CEO and founder, Michael Horvath, resigns, and the search for a new CEO begins. So they didn't have anyone lined up at the time. So only in December 2023, so pretty much not a year later, but 10 months later, they announced the new CEO, and a guy called named Michael Martin. So this is kind of the timeline of Strava the last few years. I wasn't aware of all this. I'm a user myself, but I thought it interesting just to look into the history of the last few years because it gives us a better idea where this company might go. In terms of users, we see that the public kind of numbers are in 2019, they had 42 million users, and throughout COVID, they gained a whole bunch. So by 2023, they had around 100 million users. The guesstimate right now is that only 1 to 5 million of those are paying users. So that's kind of the estimate at the moment. They grew significantly through COVID, but 100 million users, as we all might know in technology, means also a lot of sleeping, passive, fake accounts. Who knows? So around 1 to 5 million paying users. If you take a valuation of $1.5 billion, it means with 100 million users that every user is worth $15. That's interesting for conversation a bit further down. I did some estimates on the revenue. So again, this is just me doing some estimates. It is not based on insider knowledge. This is just complete assumptions. So pardon me if I'm wrong here, but I did the digging on the subscription. On average, it's around $8 by now. If we are saying they have 2.5 to 4 million premium users, the revenue is between 20 to 32 million dollars, which means the revenue multiple is 46 times the revenue. That is significant and very, very high. For example, Garmin has only 20 times revenue multiple. Ned, you come from the tech space, you know that 46x is a very high number for a tech company.
I do. I have lots to say.
I'm going to carry on quickly and coming into some more of the personal thoughts analysis here. This is again my opinion. So they have been looking into streamlining costs. Again, like many other tech companies, they probably raised too much money, invested too much, hired too much, and the last few years have been forced by the board and by investors to reduce the cost, lay off staff, increase the margins. Hence, they had to increase the revenue and increase the subscription. The pressure from investors must be there. Many of the investors who joined the last round were still the old investors, so they have been there for many, many years. As an investor myself, you want to see the cash back at some point. So I'm sure that after 15 years, some of the investors are saying, what's next? However, what I found mostly interesting, and this is now based on the new CEO they hired, is that the guy called Michael Martin was previously the GM for shopping at YouTube for some years. And before that, he was the VP and GM of Nike Marketplace, Greater China and other countries. So he has a big background in digital goods shopping, especially in sports. Final comment, what does it mean? I think there are two options right now for Strava on the table. They're getting ready to be acquired by a sporting goods company, a Nike, Adidas. It costs only $15 per user. If you think about 100 million users in evaluation, it can be fairly cheap for a company to buy that and acquire users so they can get the data on shoes, on watches, whatnot. Sporting goods company could be one, or the second option for Strava I can see is they could become and launch their own digital goods marketplace with live streaming included. This is, again, based on the CEO. I think, given his background in digital shopping, marketplaces, we might see how Strava is going to use all the data and is going to offer us products and become more of a marketplace for shops, for digital stuff and sport goods. All right. Thank you for your patience and listening to me. I thought this was a bit of an analysis of this very important company, Strava. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Ned, why don't you jump right in?
Oh my God. Well, number one, as always, thank you, man, for doing this. It's a highlight. I love to see your investigative work, so thank you. It has always been crazy to me that Strava hasn't ever tried to sell me something. You know, we've talked about this on the last show. 100 million users. They're clearly affluent. They're clearly, not clearly, but I'm going to say probably educated, high achievers. I mean, oh my word, they should be selling me everything. Like, I've never once got an ad. The only ad I've ever got is for premium. I'm guessing, and it's just a guess, so we had lots of guesses here, that Strava's soul is, hey, we're just providing a service. And after 14 years, the investors are like, I don't care about your soul. I want my money back. Let's get the YouTube Nike selling dude in and ram as much product down the throats of these 100 million people as we can get our hands on. I mean, if I was Strava, I don't want to sound like a douchebag. I mean, I've used it for free for 15 years. I would just tell me, dude, you're out of here unless you pay us some money. Choose. Like, they gently ask me if I want premium. Hey, do you want premium? I'm like, no, I'm cool. They're like, oh, okay. Like, if they said, okay, dude, we're cutting you off. It's $1 a month. If you don't pay, I'd pay tomorrow. I'd pay tomorrow. Like, I would, hardcore Strava users, really? You're not going to, and I don't know whether it's $1. I'm just using that. Marcus, the one thing I didn't notice here that you mentioned, did we find out if they're profitable or not? I think we assume they're not.
Sorry about that. They are not profitable, as of our public knowledge.
I would say I've seen some figures of Strava's revenue up to 100 million. So, you know, maybe it is more than the 40 or 50 you say, but still not profitable. I think this company is going to start alienating a few people to be profitable because most people love Strava because it's been very gentle. But I think they have no choice now. I think it's time. I think your summary is perfect. Let's go. I think they get sold in 2 to 3 years. They squeeze every penny out of all of us. And I don't begrudge them. I think they've done a good job for a long time. It's money time.
Eugene, what do you think?
I mean, I'm not from an IT background. For that, I would like to reserve my opinion before I make an unfair remark.
Fair enough. Don't worry about it. That's just us looking into the business.
Well, but Marcus, so you are an investor. I'm going to ask you an unfair question. Would you invest in Strava at this valuation?
I would for sure not. I think on a 46 multiple on revenue, let it be 30x, let it be 20. I think it's, given the environment right now, very difficult. I think we discussed it last week. The acquisition and M&A space will open up again in 2-3 years' time. Investors are going to get hungry again. Not right now. Now it's too expensive to buy. So they will have to go through another, as you said, 1 or 2 years of cost-cutting, revenue increase to become a sexy acquisition target. And that will mean some pain to some users. And it will also mean pain to, I think, the DNA of the company, because I do think they're very good guys. They are very much about the community. They care about the users. But if you are coming to unicorn status, you have to change the DNA eventually, and you need to serve certain interest groups like your investors.
I think, I don't know this Michael Martin, but if you, as you correctly say, when you're head of YouTube shopping and you ran Nike China, you know how to sell stuff. Plain and simple. And I think that, yes, I think there might be a little bit of like UTMB style drama coming in Strava when Strava says, hey, if you're not paying, you're out. Or, here's an advert for a bunch of stuff. I mean, how much would let's just think about it. How much would a nutrition brand pay to advertise to Strava users? I mean, like, you would pay money, right? So I think it's coming. I think we're going to get absolutely smashed with economic reality in Strava, but they have
This is my last comment. Again, this is just confirms the theme of a part of the theme of the show. We're seeing more commercial interest in the sport, whether it's on the UTMB Ironman side, whether it's on Strava. We're going to see it in many other parts as well. So we want to cover these topics and disclose this information so we're all aware what's going to happen and get ready for this sport. Which brings us to Malaysia.
Yeah.
One of the countries I started to trail run in. My first ever race of trail running was outside Kuala Lumpur. Very hot, very humid. I suffered. I feel like 3 heart attacks at the same time. It got me into trail running. I felt the pain, and here we go. Ewegene, thank you so much for joining us and for giving us your insights on this market. We would love to hear from you, just, a 40,000 foot view of the market, and we can zoom in different parts, but take it away. What's going on in Malaysia?
Now, foremost, thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Nat, for the invitation. Basically, let us just run through the history of trail running in Malaysia. Trail running actually started in Malaysia pre-1938. Or shall I say officially, it has been, it has come about in 1938, and it started by the British expats who created running clubs, informally known as the Hash House Harriers, the 3H. And runners are put through a challenge whereby they would just need to follow paper trails. Over the years, it has grown. A passion has grown into a commercial sports or a competitive sports. And if you talk about competition, basically pre-2011, I would say, or pre-2010, it is more, how should I call it? It is more recreational. So pre-1938, pre-2011, it is pretty much recreational. So when you talk about competition in those days, pre-2011, in places like Gunung Tahan Climbathon, you only see the elites, the cream of the crops, going into those races. However, post-2011, with the most beautiful thing coming about, TMBT in Sabah, being the first, I would say, commercial race in Malaysia, you start seeing the sports growing leaps and bounds year after year. And if you were to ask me today, I think, God, please take off 1 or 2 of those races, because there are just too many races around. Every week we are talking about not just one. At some moment there are 4 races in a year, on the weekend. My take on it is that I believe runners have a say on the directions of the sports here in the country, and they should be supporting high quality events that would give them the perfect experience, because there are just so many out there, and some of them do not even have permits to carry on, or to organize those races. Yeah,
That sounds familiar. Let's start also with some more numbers here. So how many marathon runners, road and trail, do you think are there in Malaysia?
I would say easily from the groups that I'm in, the marathon and running groups that I'm in, basically I would say there are roughly around 30 to 40,000 in Malaysia alone.
Right.
Putting it all together, recreational runner or joggers or competitive runner, whatever you call them. For me, they are just runners as well.
The Standard Chartered Kuala Lumpur Marathon has how many participants every year?
I believe 35,000 to 38,000 nowadays. Yeah.
And the trail race, a big one, whether it's MMTF or Borneo, how many runners are usually participating in those?
2,000 to 3,000 runners.
Right.
At this moment.
And how many participate on the 100K, 100-mile distance?
So in this, on this question, I would like to push you back to pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, the numbers for the longest distance are really high. We are talking about it being, the numbers being better in comparable to the 50s or the 25Ks, for example, at MMTF. However, post-pandemic, you see these numbers dropping on the longer distance. So the longer distance you see, or you study into a race, you see that the numbers are actually going down post-pandemic. And runners seems to go for the shorter distance, albeit 25 or 50 km.
Can you give us an idea of how many we're talking, just to like before COVID, after COVID?
Okay, so before COVID, if you talk about MMTF, the race that I manage, if you look at the 100 kilometer, we will easily have 800 runners. And then post-pandemic, we have got, the numbers dropped to 300, 400. So it's almost half of it. And I believe it is due to the fact that runners are getting back into the mojo and building up their endurance for the longer runs. And for me, these situations will continue on for another 1 to 2 years, or probably three more years.
I've seen something similar in Vietnam, not in terms of numbers, but in terms of, I saw in 2018, 2019, many people trying out long distance, and
Yep.
I would call them not the most hardcore runners themselves. They usually do a very long hike, which is also totally fine.
Yep.
They've tried it out. They've done the 100K, tick the box, and they're not doing it again. So it's kind of that, having done it, and then now maybe they're trying out an Ironman, or maybe they're trying out something different. So I do think it's such a new sport here. People are trying things out. They're doing 100K, and they move on. So not many stick with that distance.
If I may add, it's actually due to the number of races that's out there as well in the market. And if you want to do a race week in, week out, I would say go for the shorter distance, and this is what people are doing currently. So they are going for the numbers. Yeah.
Where are those runners mostly based? Like which hubs do you see in Malaysia? Where do they live and train?
We train everywhere throughout the country. We have got trails around. The only difference now is that pre-pandemic, we do not have the Mountain Guide Association coming into force. However, post-pandemic, we have got trained Mountain Guides Association, whereby any hikes above 500 meters, one would need to have to get their service on board.
Like, you need to be trained to have a license to do that? Oh,
you need to have a license to be a mountain guide. And there is a law now here in Malaysia. If you do any hikes above 500 meters, you would need to have a guide with you. The next question that comes is, to what extent is the mountain guides trained to do compressed hiking, for example? Because what is coming in globally and is coming in huge, in a very short while, or maybe you would have seen it happening, is what we call the fast hike or compressed hike. Yeah, and based on my trip to Korea just last month and being introduced to products that are coming into the market globally, I can see that fast hike is something that is coming in, and it's coming in a big wave, because a lot of big brands are investing in them beside fashion.
So it's basically, fast hike is a mix of this more running part of it, trail running, and the hiking part. So there are products particularly designed to be in this intersection, fast hiking.
Yeah, fast. I think the term they use in America is fast packing.
Oh, fast packing. Okay.
Which is exactly that. It means you can go for a long day or a few days, but you're not taking much. It's the same approach they took in mountaineering when they went lightweight in mountaineering. Yeah. Before taking all the gear. You take enough gear to be safe, but it's a little on the line, right? You're pushing the boundary a little. That's the idea.
And for me, basically, it's something that's already happening with the runners, with the trail runners. When we train, if you are training for 100 kilometers, I believe you will spend 5 hours, 8 hours, or to some extent, to some people, even 10 hours out there in the trail. And for me, there's compressed hike as well.
Yeah. So just to ask Eugene, so if you go for a run up a hill that's 1,000 meters, like just you left your house on a Saturday morning, went for a run up a hill, technically you're meant to have somebody with you. Is that what I understood?
You need to have a qualified mountain guide, and you need to apply for a permit. If you do not, then you are considered breaking the law when you do it.
But surely that's a little tricky to both adhere to and police as well.
Basically, this is in terms of point of control. I would say that the forestry department is trying to ensure that they are able to monitor things before things go out of hand. Basically, one needs to understand that in Southeast Asia, the jungles are not like those mountains in America or in Europe, whereby it's barren. Over here, we have got things like what we call the local term kepala air or water heads, for example. If you are not trained, you're not going to be able to foresee it coming. And of course, I think it's a good initiative that we support, and basically it creates jobs opportunity as well.
I mean, having spent a little bit of time running in Malaysia, for anybody who is obviously from Malaysia, you know how great the mountains are, but it is an undiscovered gem. Like the mountains are amazing. But you're right. There's some steep, gnarly stuff out there. So, I mean, you can get yourself in trouble.
So we actually organized a race in an island called Tioman, which is on the eastern side of Peninsular Malaysia, southeast of Peninsular Malaysia. It's a small island. When you look at it, it seems harmless. But then if you do not have a qualified guide, what is going to happen is while you're running, you might fall into some hole where the local calls tahang. Yeah. So I think it's a good investment, or it's a good initiative by the forestry department and the fire department to train people to go into the mountains and to encourage people to do it safely, on the safety aspect of things, and not waiting for things to happen before acting up.
I mean, everyone talks about Hong Kong being a great trail running heaven given its proximity to the mountains, but I actually think Kuala Lumpur is a hidden gem where you find in the city so many amazing trails, and it's not well known, I think, outside Malaysia, but I've got friends, Kali, who we all know, moved to Kuala Lumpur because of that reason. You can just get out, go into the jungle. Not like Hong Kong, it's a bit of a different hills and mountains there, but yeah, you have it right in your face. It's amazing for training.
Now, when you talk about mountain, when you ask someone about mountain and what is your picture of mountain, they're always looking at the snow-topped mountains, rocky-topped mountains. So since 3 to 4 years back, I've started pushing sky running or Skyman, for example, to tell them, hey, look here, guys. Mountain tops is not only snow and rocks. We have got tropical forested jungle path as well, being the mountain tops. And it's good to see them accepting one of our races here as well, being part of the series. And I would like to see how does the global elites actually perform on those terrains. Yeah.
In the jungle, have the great privileged luck to live in the jungle for 30 years, when you watch people who've never run in the jungle running in the jungle, they're like, holy cow, man, this is a different experience. Yes, sir, I do. And it would be great to see people. Obviously, the European mountains are what people perceive as, I mean, you've done Tor Des Geants, it is amazing. But you're right. Whether it's the Indonesian volcanoes, the Malaysian mountains, there's some things over here that I think would be super interesting to get some of the elites on.
And most of the time they're not. There's always an argument to go for and an argument to go against. And for me, I'm always looking at the safety aspect. If you want to climb more mountains, then you got to take care of the safety aspect of your trip or your adventure or your runs, And I'm very sure that you will be doing it for a very long time and not just one-off.
Could you just take us through the main races happening in Malaysia? I'm sure many of our listeners are not in Malaysia, and this whole trail tourism is a big thing. People are traveling for races. So in an unbiased view, which races are the key ones that one should look up on the Malaysian race calendar?
Boy, oh boy, you're putting me in a very difficult position because this is actually a very sensitive question, right? And people will assume that being the race director of MMTF, I'll say that MMTF is a key race. Now, let's not be biased. I will put in, I'll categorize them based on the international standards that he has obtained. If you are talking about a World Series, we have got a skyrunning World Series race happening in Malaysia in November. That will be Penang Sky Race or Kailas Penang Sky Race. And then if you look at Western States qualifier in the list, basically for 2025, there are two races, namely Cameron Ultra, as well as MMTF. And if you are talking about a race being a Tor experience circuit race, whereby if you were to complete the 100K and you will gain direct entry into Tor Des Geants without having to go through the balloting process, that would be Malaysia Mountain Trail Festival, of course. And in regards to Asia Trail Master, at this moment for 2024, we have got Borneo Ultra Trail Marathon that just happened over the weekend. We have got Kadayaman or KAR in Sabah happening later this year. We have got Tioman Ultra happening mid of the year. We have got TMBT happening sometime in September. And of course, we also have got races out there that are just trying to knock on the door, or shall I say races that has been on the second or third edition. That would be Pahang Eco, Kemensa, Merapu Rainforest Trail, Ultimate Trail of Penang, and also Janda Bai. So as you can see, these are cream of the crops. I haven't named the smaller races, the 10K, the 15K, the 30K races, and we just have too much at this moment.
The question that Ned would like to ask, is there any backyard race in Malaysia yet?
We have got one which has been organized by Malaysia backyard team, headed by Stephen Ong previously. And basically, everyone knows David Christopher is our representative to the States. I'd like to see this race being organized year in, year out. And I believe one day we would have someone to knock on the global doors as well in terms of competition.
But I would say, obviously, backyard is great. But Ewegene, to your point, 10 years ago, there would have been virtually no ultras. And now, or trails, now, as you say, there's these amazing, the most beautiful thing, Pahang Ultra, the Malaysian Mountain Trail Festival. But there's also a lot of these kind of loop 12-hour races, 12 hours on the roads. And it is just amazing. I mean, I would love to know the number, and I'm using 10 years ago as just as a number. The growth in the number of ultra distance, whether they're ultra road or ultra trail races in Malaysia, I mean, you've seen it firsthand, has been incredible.
Yeah. Ned, basically, when it comes to those looping games, I'm one of those person who hate it, But then we organize one as well.
Okay.
It goes back to the purpose. We have got a dual purpose at MMTF Consultant when we organized the Taiping Endurance Challenge, for example. For runners, it is to encourage them to embrace the distance, the higher distance or the higher time of running. Spending longer hours on the track.
Yep.
Most importantly for me, races like this are able to help me to train my guys from point of organization of things. Again, I'm saying there are just too many races in Malaysia, and runners just need to pick what is best for them and what is best out there. It's not about winning, It's not about winning a race. So what if you win a race? It's about doing something and making it sustainable and consistent over the longer period. I would just still like to run when I'm 80 or 90. I'm doing my best to achieve that.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that, Ewegene. That is the answer for sure.
And when you get older, recovery gets slower, right?
That's a
I'm
myth.
feeling it.
It
That's
does.
I'm feeling it.
Well, just Ewegene, to say, I think you were very humble to say that the Hash House Harriers started in Malaysia. I'm going to say it's probably one of the biggest, number of participants on a weekly basis. The Hash House Harriers, and I know it's not, not everyone in the world knows what it is, but as you say, one person lays a trail of paper or chalk around the jungle, and other people follow it. That started in Malaysia. Many people don't know that, but that, one of the great running activities, the Hash, is Malaysian.
And what is 3H or 4H? So basically, how do you sum it in a simple one sentence? It's actually a running club with a drinking problem. And I'm actually a Hash member as well. Been a Hash member the last 13 years. And yeah, I would say the truest form of trail running here in Malaysia would be with the Hash group. And we have got more than 200 clubs here in Malaysia alone. If I can remember it right, it's 238 or 248 clubs in total.
I've done Hash. My kids have done the Hash, and I think it's wonderful that you have that. And also, I don't know if you count, but Malaysia has a world champion runner. Now, I don't think it's ultra, but I'm sure you know So Wai Chiong, your tower runner, So Wai Ching, excuse me, who is, am I right to say, the world's number one ranked tower?
He is a number one tower ranked runner. Someone that we supported since he was at the number 5. Yeah,
he's been amazing. He's won. I know it's not ultra, but it is running, and it is running up a tall thing. But he's won, the in New York, and he's won in Taipei, and I follow him, and I imagine one day when he cuts across to sky running or longer things, he could dominate. I think obviously you know him personally, but I imagine he could dominate if he comes across.
Yeah, and that is why we have been speaking to him, and we have been trying to push him into the vertical kilometer challenges that we host. And it's good to see him doing well. And he's just a very humble guy. He accepts defeats and he works towards it, and he will come back the following year trying to outdo you. And this is a spirit that we are always looking for.
I watch his videos when he arrives at the top of any tower. Yeah. That dude has put his effort in. He is passed out he must have a heart rate like 200, like and above. He looks. So yes, cheer him on, as I'm sure you are. It would be great to see him as a Malaysian topping the steps in, as you say, vertical K, etc.
As a human, the spirit is admirable. He does not target a short or low target. He does not have a low target of things. He always aims for the highest. And for him, if he miss, he will actually fall on the moon instead. Things like that.
That's a good segue to who are the key runners to follow in Malaysia?
Now, if you ask me, in Malaysia, currently, Milton Ahmad would be the top for the men category, followed by David Simpat. And then we have got a gist of everyone else, Zaki Ame, Wilson Sningin. And on the women's side, we would have Lim Seok Ha for the longer races, and then Tahira. And I would love to see Tahira racing more out there. He was winning most trail races in Asia before she jumped into triathlon, represented the country, and got a silver medal 2 years back. Thing that worries me is while the races are growing, I do not see a special individual knocking on the doors that, hey guys, I'm here to challenge you. And this is what I've not seen in Malaysia at this moment.
Like, you mean a new generation of talent emerging that is kind of challenging the existing.
I'm sorry to my fellow Malaysians, but then this is a true. This is my personal opinion of things. Organizers are looking at races after races. No one is looking at the development of athletes, for example. It's nice to see what is happening in Philippines. It's nice to see that there are new runners coming out from Thailand, from Indonesia. This is something that I hope to be able to contribute towards in the near future or in the long run. And I hope that we will have someone coming in soon. And I believe most of this is due to prize money. If you run a 5K road marathon, you get 300 ringgit. When you run a 5K or even a 100K trail run, you do not get any payment. And I think this is a push off for these runners. Again, doing the sports for the right purpose for me is the most important thing, and to make it sustainable.
Are you going to offer then more prize money at your races?
At this moment, we only offer prize money in Lecka International Marathon, road race that we organize since last year. We are looking into it for this year for some of our races. And of course, I cannot divulge much on it because it's just being implemented, and it would need to be approved by all stakeholders as well.
I think as a whole, we talked about this last week, I think, Marcus, when there was the Saudi Arabia race that put $480,000 up top. And what happened? Of course, John Albon and all the top guys go flocking. Yeah. Now, I also understand that there's not much money in this sport. So Saudi can do it from a government perspective, but it is the catch-22. To grow a sport and have great athletes, you do need money. It's just a fact. Like, I love the soul of the sport as much as you do, Eugene. I completely agree. But, you want to build stuff. There does need to be that commercialization. But it's also, and again, I don't need to tell you, but making money as a race director is no easy task, right? So
Ned, you see it very clearly. Every year, I do not put any of the money in my pocket. It's about reinvestment and reinvestment and reinvestment, and it becomes painful. It becomes painful, especially after during the pandemic. It becomes painful, especially after the pandemic. And we have got other initiatives that we undertook as well from the races that we do. And to some extent, money is important, and money will ensure the growth of things, and that will also dictate why we do what we do, which will be announced in a very short while. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there also a trend, Malaysia, where the runners are now going overseas to race more? I've seen you, of course, being consistently and constantly racing in other countries. I'm sure that's for different reasons. But is there also a trend for people to go to UTMB or Tor Des Geants? What's happening on the international front from Malaysia?
In general, after the pandemic, people seems to be traveling more. People seems to be enjoying the quality of life more. And I would say the numbers will keep growing from now as well. I mean, there are runners who are going out, and I believe the numbers will continue to grow year on year.
When do you think there's going to be an Asian winner at UTMB?
Oh, that's a hard one. Let's start with the shorter distance. I believe the world top 10 or the world top 20 has got equal chance to win the UTMB. Not the maiden race, the 160. But then if you're talking about 50K, I think we Asian has got some runners who can challenge the top runners. People like Jisoo Kim in South Korea. People like John Stingray Onifa. Who has constantly been pushing beyond limits. I think these two runners would certainly do well in the shorter races like the OCC in UTMB.
And maybe this is the last one. What's your hope for Asian trail running the next 5 years?
Support each other, creating an Asian hub for trail running. And from then onwards, building it up together, heading to the global scene.
I think that's a very
Marcus,
good trend. Go ahead.
Yeah, Marcus, Ned. For me, trails is supposed to be about togetherness. It's supposed to bring people together. And I hate to see money being the evil of all roots of problems, whereby it's separating people. Organizers talking bad about the other organizers, for example. And for me, it's all money driven. So if you ask me 5 years, let's work on togetherness in trail first, and how can we support each other. It does not matter whether you're from Vietnam, whether you're from Hong Kong, whether you're from Korea. If we are able to support each other and do cross marketing, I believe we would have a future together. Yeah.
That's a great point. Like that's a 100%, Eugene. That is, we were talking about it on the last show. Greatest sport in the world. It's what Dylan Bowman always says on Free Trail, right? So we borrow it from him. But to be the greatest sport in the world, it's not about, my race or your race. I mean, there is a reality, but there's nothing better. Just get a group of people, go out running, of course, does money come into it? Yes. Can it be done in a respectful way? Like as you guys know, I love Backyard. I love Lazarus Lake. Mm-hmm. Is Laz the greatest race director? I think so. Yeah. Does he make money? Absolutely not. Right? Does he do it for the right reasons? Absolutely. But is it sustainable? Laz lives in his own Laz bubble, right? And he creates feeling and community. I think you're right. Your point is right. The realities of the world are also there. But I think if we go at it with the right mindset, like you do and like Laz has, we'll get a better outcome.
Okay.
Very interesting to see. I do think you represent there a general Asian mindset, which I really love about Asia. It's about the so-called integration. We see Asian economies, societies, cultures working more together. And I also see that's the case in trail running, whether it's in racing or just on the training bit. It's wonderful to see the people traveling more from Vietnam to Malaysia, Philippines, here and there. And I think that brings growth in many different ways, whether economic, cultural, intellectual growth. I think trail running can play and is playing a very important part to the integration of Asia in general.
Trail running or running per se, for me, is a very strong medium moving forward to achieve a lot of things in life. If you were to apply it to life, you don't give up in races, so you don't give up in your life. Things like that, and above all, it brings people together. Yeah, it helps people to understand as well the problems and also the issues throughout the world.
That's a nice way of finishing up this section. Thank you so much, Eugene. Really appreciate your insight. And we are really excited what's going to happen on your side. Can't wait to hear about it soon. And in general, I think anyone out there, you guys should definitely visit Malaysia for training or for racing. Incredible, beautiful country. The slogan of Malaysia is Malaysia, truly Asia. I think it's really true in many different
and Malaysia boleh.
Malaysia boleh, that's a sentence. So yeah, again, it's an important part of Asian trail running. Because it just happened this weekend, we just got to cover quickly the race you mentioned. We do have the Borneo Ultra Trail Marathon happened this weekend. So we're putting it up on the screen quickly. We know that's one of the key races that's happened and is happening in Malaysia. Beautiful race in Borneo. Looks like a lot of jungle as usual. Any comments from you on the winners of this race? You have, I'm sure, some insights there, Eugene.
So in the 50 km category, it seems to be the hotly contested ones, having Milton Ahmad pitting himself against Alessandro Sherpa. And of course, Milton Ahmad took it on his home ground. And for me, there's no surprise on that. The only surprise that comes to me was on David Simpat. I believe the heat actually won the day for him. It was against him. And for that reason, he dropped out at CP6, if I'm not wrong.
Right.
And while I have not run the Borneo Ultra, I have done the trek up Kinabalu. I've spent some time over there. If anybody who doesn't know Malaysia, there's kind of two parts to Malaysia, which is the island and peninsula. There's some big mountains. I mean, this Borneo Ultra is no joke. I mean, I don't know the mountains it goes up, but some of the mountains over there are serious things. So yeah, it's a proper race indeed.
It's a mountainous or hilly area, Kiaulu. So runners are put through the challenge. But then I believe the difficulty is not the hills or the mountains. The difficulty is actually the heat. The heat in Borneo, when it gets to you, it really gets to you because the humidity is really high. We are talking about almost 40-45% of humidity.
Incredible. On the other news front, we had the Tokyo Road Marathon, quickly covering this one because highly anticipated race of Kipchoge, who unfortunately did not perform that well. Ned, what do you think of Kipchoge's performance?
Do you see what he said? It said, I mean, is he the humblest, most wonderful man in the sport? I can only see what I read. I can only see or read what is put out there. But this man seems like the soul of running. Like, he just seems like as good a dude as you can get. And he said, not every day can be Christmas. That was his summary of his performance. Not every day does your body deliver. He had also mentioned he was running this, partly in memory of Kelvin Kiptum, who obviously sadly died. But the interesting part of this is the winner, Benson Kiprutu, went 2:02:02. I mean, that we are not just getting close to breaking 2. I think obviously Kelvin would have got there. But the fact that Tokyo's a major marathon, but the fact that just another marathon, somebody ran 2:02. I mean, the top 10, 2:06:50. Think about it. If you're running in Kenya and you're a 2:10 guy, you're not even in the game. 2:10 and you're not in the game. Like 2:07, you're not in the game. 2:05, you're not in the game. I'm telling you, I don't think there's any American runners. There's no German runners. There's no British runners running 2:05. And if you look at the top 10 in the men's, Kenya, Ethiopia, Kenya, interestingly, Israel, Kenya, Japan, which is wonderful. Yeah. I mean, the Japanese adore their running. And on the women's side, the interesting thing was Sifan Hassan, who is just amazing, came 5th. I think she doesn't expect to win every time she lines up, but we expect her to win. But the winning time there again was 2:15. Yep. It used to be crazy when women broke 2:20, and 5 of them went under. So the level of marathon running is amazing to see. And on the streets of Tokyo, I've run the Tokyo Marathon, and the Japanese adore running. Beautiful to see. And look, for Kipchoge, that's sport. I mean, to Eugene's point, somebody has to win. Somebody has to lose. You can't win every time. That's the beauty of sport. Yeah. You should revel in it, accept it humbly, and move on.
I mean, if you want to win a race, run 100 meter. If you want to gain experience in life, run a marathon or an ultra,
100%.
Well said.
100%.
Well said. Wonderful. And I have a feeling that today's drop that Ned is giving us is actually a perfect summary of all the different things we talked about today. So now becomes the last segment of the show, which is Ned's drop of inspiration and wisdom. Ned, take it away. Over to you.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate it. All right, this one's called Of All the Trails. Of all the trails, what's your favorite? Is it mountains, desert, jungle, grasslands, road, city, beach? I've been lucky. I have run in many places. New Zealand, through the stunning mountains when I was meant to be skiing, but I went running instead. Australia, in the outback. I was faster than a kangaroo, a slow one. Japan, 42.2. In Tokyo, I ran 3:02. Sad face. That was my chance. Taiwan, big city, that Taipei. I got lost. I ended up back where I started. Hong Kong, oh, the hills, the greatest running city in the world. Indonesia, on a hash, got lost. 12 hours in the dark, stumbling around in the jungle. I got found by locals who laughed at me. Thailand, on the beach. Sand is slow and hot, but with coconuts, you can run forever. Myanmar, through the driest riverbed, the Irrawaddy, 44 centigrade. There was no water. The slow boat from Mandalay. I'm as slow as that. Dubai. The crazy thing, it was cold in the Middle East. Yes, It can be winter there too. Kuwait, by the bay. Guess what I saw? You get a special prize if you can guess. Pickleball courts and cats. Tons of them. In Kuwait. Who would have known? South Africa, when a country can be so beautiful and so challenging. I'm going for a run, I said. Watch out, they said. It was amazing. Germany, the banks of a river in Frankfurt. Winter, cold, amazing. Ducks. They must be cold. Scotland, my home. The hills. I am biased, but it's true. Most beautiful country to run in. I'll run the length of Scotland one day. USA, America. Central Park. Virginia Blue Ridge Mountains on the country road. And San Francisco, Beta Breakers Race with naked people. No place like America. Mexico, Wild Run in Cancun. I was at a business conference. It was also spring break. I ran at 7 a.m. through drunk students not going home. Canada, I ran all the way to the border of America and back to my hotel. 20K so far. And my home, Singapore, one of the smallest countries on earth. And I ran 213K in one go here. Longest run ever in the smallest place ever. I know my favorite. It was every time I put on my shoes. But remember, every run is a true privilege. Every trail or road is amazing. You can have a favorite, but always remember, it's amazing every time. My favorite time of day and favorite trail, you know it. It's all of it. See you out there, Ned.
Thank you, Ned. That is goosebump time. Thank you so much. Appreciate the summary.
Thank you. Well, I was thinking that I love running, and every time I go running, I love it. And then I was like, well, I loved running in New Zealand and in Malaysia and in Indonesia. I love running everywhere. So I thought that was the inspiration for this week. We are lucky every time we run.
That's a wrap. Thank you guys for this episode. Thank you, Ewegene, for joining us. Great to have you on the show. Looking forward to having you back on soon. As usual, anyone, please subscribe to us, whether it's on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. You can find us also on Instagram and Twitter. And it's supported by Lecka Nutrition. Thank you, everyone, and see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Ewegene, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.